The notification didn't just light up my phone, it felt like a physical slap. After weeks of building their charity initiative, I expected a seat at the table. Instead, my mother's message dismantled my entire evening with 6 blunt words: "Don't come, only elites are invited." I sat in the silence of my office, staring at the screen, realizing that to the people who raised me, I wasn't family. I was just a messy liability they needed to hide. The silence on the 14th floor of the Brightline Strategies building was usually my favorite part of the day. It was the hour when the frantic energy of marketing pitches and client calls settled into the hum of the HVAC system and the distant, rhythmic wash of traffic on the coastal highway below. I sat at my desk, the glow of my dual monitors illuminating a half-finished slide deck. But my attention had drifted to the phone resting face up on a stack of invoices. It was 10 minutes past 6 in the evening. The gala started at 7. My dress, a deep emerald silk sheath that I had purchased specifically because it was understated enough to blend into the wallpaper, yet expensive enough to avoid my mother's critical eye, was hanging in a garment bag on the back of my office door. My heels were in a box beneath my desk. I had spent the last 6 months orchestrating the back-end logistics of this night, formatting donor tiers, scrubbing mailing lists, and ensuring that the narrative of the Ward family was polished to a high, charitable sheen. The phone buzzed. It was the 5th time in 20 minutes. I watched the screen light up with a notification from Marlene, my mother. "Thinking of you." 5 minutes before that, "Hope you are having a restful evening." And 10 minutes before that, "So proud of how hard you work." My stomach twisted. This was the specific, sugary cadence Marlene Ward adopted when she was managing a crisis or rearranging reality. It was the textual equivalent of a pat on the head before a door was slammed in your face. We had spoken that morning. We had confirmed the timeline. I was supposed to arrive at the Larkhaven Club by 6:30 to help check audio levels for the presentation video. A video I had edited myself on weekends because my father, Daniel, did not trust the agency editors to capture the soul of our family. I reached for the phone, my fingers cold. I unlocked the screen. The 3 dots of a typing indicator appeared, vanished, and appeared again. Then, the message arrived. It was not sugary. It was a sledgehammer wrapped in digital gray. "Don't come, only elites are invited." I stared at the words. I read them once, twice, a third time, trying to find a joke or a typo hidden in the syntax. But there was no ambiguity. It was a command. Before I could even process the humiliation pooling in my chest, a second message chimed directly below it. "Please don't make this about you tonight." The air in my office seemed to thin, making it hard to draw a breath. I stood up, the chair rolling back with a sharp clatter. This gala was not just a party, it was the launch of the Ward Family Giving Initiative. It was the culmination of 3 years of my professional guidance. I had ghostwritten the mission statement. I had courted the initial seed donors, including people I knew from my own career at Brightline, leveraging my reputation to vouch for my parents' sudden pivot to large-scale philanthropy. Only elites, the word hung there, absurd and cruel. I was their daughter. I dialed my father. He answered on the second ring, which meant he was holding his phone, likely already dressed in his tuxedo, standing in the marble foyer of the Larkhaven Club, checking the time. "Claire," he said. His voice was clipped, calm, and utterly devoid of warmth. It was his boardroom voice, the one he used when firing contractors. "Dad," I said, my voice shaking despite my best effort to lock it down. "I just got a text from Mom. She said not to come." "We think it is for the best," he replied instantly, as if reading from a script. "For the best." I gripped the edge of my desk. "I built the slide deck you are using tonight. I invited Tessa Klein. I coordinated the press release. What are you talking about?" "Lower your voice, Claire," he said. "You are overreacting. This is exactly why we made the decision." "I am not overreacting," I said, trying to lower my volume, though the office was empty. "I am reacting to being uninvited to my own family's event an hour before doors open. Why am I not allowed there? There was a pause on the line, filled with the muffled sound of silverware being arranged in the background. When he spoke again, his tone had shifted from professional to pitiful, the way one speaks to a slow child. Look at the guest list. Claire, this is a very specific crowd. High stakes. Old money. It is a delicate ecosystem. He sighed. You just do not fit the room. The phrase hit me like a physical blow to the sternum. You do not fit the room. He had said those exact words 15 years ago when I told him I wanted to go to a state university with a top-tier journalism program instead of the private, connections-based college my mother had selected. He had looked at me then with the same mixture of disappointment and appraisal, as if I were a piece of furniture that clashed with the drapes. I fit the room when I was writing your speeches, I said, my voice hardening. Do not resort to dramatics, he snapped. Enjoy your evening off. Order some takeout. We will debrief next week. The line went dead. I stood there. The silence of the office rushing back in, heavier than before. The garment bag on the door looked like a ghost. I walked over to it, unzipped the plastic, and touched the silk of the emerald dress. I had bought it with my own money. I had bought the shoes. I had cleared my schedule. I considered going anyway. I imagined driving down the coast, marching up the steps of the Larkhaven Club, and demanding entry. But then the memory of my 25th birthday washed over me, the dinner where I had arrived 10 minutes late, flustered from traffic, and my mother had spent the entire meal apologizing to the waiter for my frantic energy, making me look unstable and messy in front of guests. If I showed up now, uninvited, I would be the crazy daughter crashing the charity ball. I would be the problem. I zipped the bag back up. I grabbed my purse. I left the office, walking past the rows of dark cubicles, feeling a profound sense of defeat. By the time I reached my apartment, the sun had set. The coastal fog was rolling in, obscuring the lights of the harbor. I didn't turn on the overhead lights. I walked straight to the kitchen, filled the kettle, and set it on the stove. I made tea, an expensive oolong blend I usually saved for Sunday mornings, but when I drank it, it tasted like hot water and nothing else. I sat on my sofa, wrapped in a knitted blanket, and opened my laptop. The local society page was live streaming the red carpet arrival. The camera was positioned at the top of the Larkhaven stairs, catching the guests as they ascended toward the golden glow of the ballroom. I watched them. I saw the mayor. I saw the partners from the law firm downtown. I saw people I had emailed last week, people who had replied to me with warmth and excitement. Then I saw my parents. Daniel and Marlene Ward looked immaculate. My father was tall and silver-haired, projecting an air of benevolent authority. My mother wore a champagne-colored gown that cost more than my car. Her smile fixed and radiant. They paused for the photographers, holding hands. They looked like the perfect philanthropists. They looked like good people. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. Hot and humiliating, I wiped it away angrily. "Don't make this about you," she had said. My phone buzzed on the cushion beside me. I ignored it, assuming it was another directive from Marlene, perhaps telling me to stop watching the stream. It buzzed again, then a third time. I picked it up, bracing myself for more cruelty. The first message was from Tessa Klein. Tessa was a powerhouse in Harbor Glen. She owned the largest real estate development firm in the tri-state area. I had consulted for her nonprofit arm 2 years ago, refusing to charge her for the final month of work because I believed in her cause. We had stayed in touch. She was the one who had taught me that philanthropy was about impact, not image. "Are you parking or already inside?" her text read. "I told the senator you would be the one to introduce the new initiative. I want him to meet you." I stared at the screen. The senator. Before I could type a reply, a second message appeared from a different number. It was Graham Sutter, the event liaison at the Larkhaven Club. I had spent hours on the phone with Graham over the last month, coordinating dietary restrictions and seating charts. He was a good man, terrified of my mother, but respectful of me. "Ms. Ward." The text read, "We have a small issue. Guests are asking for you by name. The program is running 10 minutes behind because people are looking for you in the lobby. Please advise." My heart hammered against my ribs. Guests were asking for me. My parents had told me I didn't fit the room. They had told me I was a liability. But the people in that room, the people with the actual money and influence, were looking for me. A cold realization settled over me, sharpening my focus. This wasn't just about embarrassment. This wasn't just my parents being snobs. I was the bait. They had used my professional credibility, my relationships, and my reputation for competence to secure these donors. They had used my name to get the meetings. They had used my face to sell the trust. And now that the checks were written and the cameras were rolling, they had cut me out of the frame to keep the spotlight for themselves. They wanted the glory of the Ward family, without the inconvenience of the daughter who actually did the work. I opened the WhatsApp group chat we had used for the event planning. It was titled, Ward Family Giving Initiative, except it wasn't. I stared at the header. The name had been changed. The Ward Legacy Circle. I scrolled up. The name change had happened 3 hours ago. Marlene had done it. I searched the chat history for the final program PDF I had approved on Tuesday. I tried to open the file. File deleted by admin. I went to the cloud drive link I had set up. Access denied. My name was nowhere. They had scrubbed me. I set the mug of tea down on the coffee table with a deliberate, heavy clatter. The sadness that had been paralyzing me 10 minutes ago evaporated. In its place, a cold, hard anger began to crystallize. It was not the fiery, messy anger of a teenager. It was the strategic, quiet fury of a woman who realizes she has been defrauded. I stood up and walked to the bedroom. I didn't reach for the emerald dress. That was the dress of a daughter trying to please her parents. I went to the back of my closet and pulled out a black dress. It was severe, tailored, and sharp, a high neck, long sleeves, and a cut that looked like armor. I pulled my hair back into a tight, low bun. I applied lipstick, a shade of dark red that looked like a warning. I was not going to crash the party. I wasn't going to scream or throw a drink. I was going to walk into that club, and I was going to see exactly what they were selling in my name. I called a rideshare. The drive to the Larkhaven Club took 20 minutes. The driver was chatty, talking about the weather and the traffic, but I offered only monosyllabic answers. I was rehearsing. I am here to assist with a donor inquiry. I was delayed by a work emergency. So lovely to see you. Neutral, professional, unbreakable. The car pulled up to the long, winding driveway of the club. The valet stand was a flurry of activity. I stepped out. The cool ocean breeze hitting my face. I could hear the music from inside a string quartet playing a sanitized version of a pop song. I walked up the grand staircase. My heels clicked on the stone. A steady, rhythmic countdown. There were 2 security guards at the main double doors, flanking a podium with a tablet. I recognized one of them, a man named Elias I had joked with during the site walkthroughs last week. "Good evening, Elias," I said, offering a polite, tight smile. Running a bit late, Elias looked up. His smile started, then faltered. He glanced down at the tablet, then back at me. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "Ms. Ward," he said, I didn't expect to see you." "Change of plans," I said, moving to step past him. He stepped in front of me. It was a subtle move, but firm. He blocked the door. "I am sorry, Ms. Ward," he said, his voice lowering so the couple behind me wouldn't hear. "I can't check you in." "I don't need to be checked in, Elias," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'm family. I'm on the internal list." He looked at the tablet screen again. The glow illuminated the hesitation in his eyes. He tapped the screen, and for a second, he tilted it just enough that I could see the display. There was my name, Claire Ward, and right next to it, in bold red block letters, was a note that had been manually added to the system. "Do not admit. Redirect." Heat rushed up my neck, stinging my eyes. It was one thing to be uninvited via text message. It was another to be blacklisted like a stalker at the venue where my parents were currently drinking champagne. Redirect. Like I was a lost package. Like I was a confused geriatric patient. The couple behind me cleared their throats. "Is there a problem?" the woman asked, peering around my shoulder. I looked at the note on the screen. I looked at the closed doors. I could picture my mother inside, holding court, telling everyone how unfortunate it was that poor Claire couldn't make it, how I was struggling, how I just needed rest. I swallowed the heat. I swallowed the tears. I forced the humiliation down until it sat in my stomach like a stone, heavy and useful. "No problem," I said to the woman behind me, turning slightly so she could see my face, so she would remember later that I was calm. "Just a mix-up with the credentials." I looked back at Elias. "I understand. Elias, you are just doing your job." I stepped out of the line, moving to the side of the portico where the shadows fell across the stone. I didn't leave. I stood there, listening to the laughter drifting out from the party I had built, and took my phone out of my clutch. If they wanted to treat me like an outsider, I would stop protecting them like family. I dialed Graham Sutter. It was time to find out what the Ward Legacy Circle was actually hiding. I stepped away from the portico, moving toward the shadows where the manicured hedges met the stone wall of the club. My phone felt heavy in my hand, a black brick of potential disaster. I dialed Graham Sutter. He answered on the first ring. Breathless. "Ms. Ward," he said. The background noise on his end was a chaotic mix of clinking glassware and the low roar of 300 people trying to impress each other. "I saw you at the front. Please tell me you did not leave." "I am still here, Graham," I said, keeping my back to the entrance. "I am standing near the East Garden Gate, but Elias seems to think I am a security threat. He showed me the tablet. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I am coming to get you. Do not move, but I cannot bring you through the lobby. Meet me at the service entrance, the one by the kitchen loading dock." I lowered the phone, staring at the screen. The service entrance. I had hosted galas here. I had walked governors and tech CEOs through the front doors, shaking hands, taking coats, guiding them toward the champagne tower. Now, I was being told to sneak in past the dumpsters and the catering vans like a disgraced vendor trying to collect an unpaid invoice. "Fine," I said to the dead air. I walked around the perimeter of the building. The gravel crunched under my heels, a harsh sound against the distant, elegant swell of the string quartet. The air grew warmer and thicker as I approached the rear of the club, smelling of roasted lamb and exhaust from the idling delivery trucks. It was a humiliating sensory shift from the scent of jasmine and expensive perfume at the front to the smell of grease and garbage at the back. Graham pushed the heavy metal door open just as I arrived. He looked frantic. His bow tie was slightly askew, and a sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead. Graham was a good man, a career event planner who lived and died by the schedule, and right now, he looked like a man watching a train derail in slow motion. "Claire," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. He ushered me inside, past a stack of crates filled with empty wine bottles. "I am so sorry. You have to believe me. This was not my call." We stood in a narrow concrete corridor that vibrated with the hum of the industrial dishwashers. The lighting was fluorescent and unforgiving, buzzing overhead. It was the stark opposite of the warm, amber glow awaiting the guests in the ballroom. Elias had a redirect notice on my file. "Graham," I said. I crossed my arms, not to protect myself, but to stop my hands from shaking. "Who put that there?" Graham rubbed the back of his neck. He looked miserable. "Your mother. She called the security office personally at 4 o'clock this afternoon. She said you were feeling unwell, mentally fragile," were her exact words, "and that if you showed up, it would be a scene. She instructed us to prioritize your comfort by keeping you away from the crowds." "Mentally fragile," I repeated. The words tasted like copper. "And you believed her." "I work for the client, Claire," Graham said, though he had the decency to look at his shoes. "You know how this works. The contract is signed by Daniel and Marlene Ward. If they give a security directive, we have to follow it. But I knew it was wrong. That is why I texted you." He reached into the pocket of his blazer and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was a program, not the glossy, heavy stock booklet the guests were holding right now, but a thinner, printer paper draft. "Look at this," he said, handing it to me. I unfolded it. It was a proof from 3 days ago. On the inside cover, under the heading, The Ward Family Giving Initiative, there was a list of founding members: Daniel Ward, Marlene Ward, Claire Ward. My name was there, anchored in black and white. "Now look at the ones on the tables," Graham said. He didn't have a copy of the final version, but he didn't need to show me. The implication hung in the damp, warm air between us. "We printed the final batch this morning," Graham said. "Your mother sent a revised file at 7 o'clock this morning, rush order. She paid the rush fee personally. She had your name scrubbed from every page. Claire, the donor list, the bio section, even the thank you note at the end. It wasn't an accident. It was a demolition." I stared at the draft in my hand. It wasn't just exclusion. It was erasure. They hadn't just uninvited me. They had rewritten the history of the last 3 years to ensure I never existed within it. "Why?" I asked, looking up at him. "Why do this? They need me. I know the donors better than they do. Half the people in that room are there because I sent the email." "I don't know," Graham said. He checked his watch, anxiety spiking in his eyes. "I have to get back to the floor. If Marlene sees me missing, she will ask questions. You can't stay here. Claire, if security finds you in the service corridor, they will have to escort you off the property. It is protocol." "I am not leaving," I said. My voice was quiet but final. "I am not going to cause a scene. Graham, I just need to see. I need to understand what is happening in that room." Graham hesitated. He looked at the door to the kitchen, then back at me. "The staff hallway behind the ballroom. The one that leads to the A/V booth. It is dark. No guests go back there. If you stay out of sight." "Thank you," I said. He nodded once, then turned and hurried back through the swinging doors into the kitchen, disappearing into the steam and noise. I smoothed the front of my black dress and walked deeper into the club's underbelly. I knew these hallways. I had navigated them a dozen times during site visits. I moved past the dry storage, past the staff lockers, and found the narrow service corridor that ran parallel to the main ballroom foyer. To my left, there was a small alcove near the guest restrooms, a blind spot where the service staff usually stacked extra chairs. I stepped into it, pressing myself against the wall. Through the thin decorative lattice that separated the alcove from the hallway, I could see the guests mingling. The air smelled of expensive lilies and champagne. I saw silk hems and tuxedo trousers moving past. 2 women stopped just on the other side of the lattice to adjust their shoes. I recognized the voice immediately. It was Mrs. Gable, the wife of a prominent heart surgeon. I had sat in her living room 4 months ago, explaining the tax benefits of the new foundation. "I honestly expected to see the daughter," Mrs. Gable said. "Did you see the website last week? It had her fingerprints all over it. The copy was smart." "I asked Marlene about her," the second woman replied. "I didn't recognize the voice, perhaps a new donor." She got this very tragic look on her face. She lowered her voice and said, "It is a hard time for us. Claire is complicated." The word landed like a weapon wrapped in silk. Complicated. It was the perfect word. It implied everything without saying anything. It suggested addiction, or mental illness, or some unspeakable scandal, all while allowing the listener to fill in the blanks with their own worst imagination. It garnered sympathy for the parents and suspicion for the child. "That is a shame," Mrs. Gable said, her tone dripping with recreational pity. "I thought she was the brains of the operation. Daniel is charming, but he is not exactly a detail man." "Well," the other woman said, "apparently the stability just isn't there. You can't have someone unstable managing a legacy fund. It is too risky." They laughed. A light, tinkling sound, and moved on toward the ballroom. I stood frozen in the alcove. My hands were clenched so tightly that my fingernails were digging into my palms. Unstable. That was the narrative. That was why I couldn't be here. If I was here, acting normal, speaking coherently, the lie would fall apart. They needed me absent so they could paint me as broken. I moved from the alcove, slipping further down the corridor until I reached the heavy velvet curtains that separated the staff entrance from the ballroom itself. There was a glass partition here, meant to dampen the sound, offering a panoramic view of the event floor. I looked through the glass. The room was magnificent. I had chosen the centerpieces tall, architectural arrangements of white orchids and driftwood. I had chosen the lighting a soft, golden amber that made everyone look 10 years younger. And in the center of the room, standing beneath the crystal chandelier, were my parents. Daniel was laughing, his head thrown back, one hand resting on the shoulder of the city councilman. His smile was too wide. It was the smile of a man who had just gotten away with something. Marlene stood beside him, her hand gripping his forearm. To anyone else, it looked like affection. To me, it looked like a brand. She was claiming him, claiming the moment, claiming the space. A photographer circled them, the flash popping rapidly. Pop, pop, pop. It didn't look like a charity gala. It looked like a campaign launch. Every movement was staged. Every interaction was performed for the lens. They weren't greeting guests. They were collecting visual evidence of their own benevolence. I felt a hand on my arm and spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Rena Mercado stood there. She was the club's operations manager, a woman I had worked with closely for 3 years. She was wearing her headset and carrying a tablet, her face set in a grim line. "You should not be here, Claire," she said. Her voice was not unkind, but it was urgent. "I know," I said. "Graham let me in." "Graham is a soft touch," Rena said. She glanced at the glass partition, then back at me. She didn't look at me with pity. She looked at me with recognition. Rena had grown up with a difficult family. We had bonded over coffee about the specific weight of parental expectations. "Come with me," she said. "If the floor manager sees you, he will call Elias. I can't stop him." She pulled me away from the glass and led me into the AV control booth. It was a small, dark room filled with monitors and soundboards. The technician was out on a break. The room was empty. Rena closed the door and leaned against it. "You are being managed, Claire," she said bluntly. "I hate it. I have been watching them do it all week." "Managed how?" I asked. Rena walked over to the schedule board mounted on the wall. It was a whiteboard covered in colored markers, detailing the minute-by-minute run of show. "Look at the 8:15 slot," she said, pointing. I stepped closer. The handwriting was neat, written in red marker. 8:15 p.m. Legacy Moment Family Story. No Claire. Underneath it, in parentheses, were the cues: cue video, cue applause, cue pledge. Family story, I whispered. "I wrote that script. It is about my grandmother." "They changed the script," Rena said. "I heard the rehearsal this afternoon. They cut every mention of you. They cut the part about you helping Eleanor with the community garden grants. Now it is just Daniel and Marlene, carrying the torch alone." She tapped the board where it said, "Cue pledge." "And this?" she said. "Do you know what this is?" I shook my head. "We were supposed to announce the fundraising goal. That is all." "No," Rena said. "They are announcing a personal gift, a matching pledge. Daniel is going to stand up there and announce that the Ward family is personally seeding the fund with $5 million. The air left my lungs. $5 million. I stared at her. "That is impossible." "I heard him say the number," Rena said. "He practiced it 3 times to get the cadence right." "We don't have $5 million, I said, my mind racing through the spreadsheets I had managed for them. "My parents are house poor. They have assets. Yes, but everything is leveraged. The liquidity isn't there. If they pledge $5 million, it is a lie." "Or they are expecting money from somewhere else," Rena suggested. "Or they are banking on the fact that no one asks for proof of a pledge on the night of the gala. It creates social pressure. If the Wards put in $5 million, the other donors have to step up. It inflates the pot." It was a con, a sophisticated, high society con. They were using a fake pledge to leverage real donations from their friends, building a war chest of other people's money to cement a status they hadn't earned, and they needed me gone because I was the only one who knew the math. I was the compliance officer they had fired before the audit. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I pulled it out. Voicemail from Mom. I looked at Rena. She nodded. Listen to it. I pressed play, holding the phone up between us. Marlene's voice floated out, tinny and sweet. Honey, I hope you are cozy at home. I just wanted to check in. I know you were disappointed, but really, tonight is just not your scene. She paused. In the background, I could hear laughter, loud, raucous laughter. And then I heard my father's voice. Distant but clear, is it done? We love you, Marlene said into the phone, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. Get some rest. The message ended. It wasn't a private message. The background noise, the timing she had made the call in front of people. She had performed the act of the concerned mother for an audience, letting them see her worry, letting them witness her burden. Poor Marlene. Dealing with that difficult girl. I felt a coldness settle in my chest that was entirely new. It wasn't sadness anymore. It wasn't even anger. It was clarity. I need the files. Rena, I said. Rena hesitated. Claire, I can't give you client files. I signed an NDA. I am not asking for the donor data, I said. I am asking for the event logs, the approvals, the changes. I need to prove that I was part of this until this morning. I need to prove that the exclusion was strategic, not a reaction to some imaginary breakdown. Rena bit her lip. She looked at the schedule board, then at the door. The printer logs, she said softly. They are on the shared network, and the email approvals for the program. Those aren't confidential donor records. Those are operational logs. Show me, I said. Rena moved to the computer console. She typed in her passcode. The screens flickered. She navigated through the club's back-end system, opening the folder for Event Ward Legacy Circle. She scrolled down the list of files. There, she said, pointing to a PDF timestamped at 7:15 a.m. that morning. The file name made my stomach drop. Claire Ward _bio _final _remove .pdf. It wasn't named revised or updated. It was named remove. It was a direct command codified in a file name. It was evidence of intent. Open the email chain associated with it, I said. Rena clicked. An email from Marlene popped up. Subject urgent change. Print immediately. Graham, please see the attached revised program. We need to remove the bio on page 4. It is a sensitive family matter. Please ensure no previous versions are distributed. We will cover the reprint cost. Do not discuss this with the party in question. We are handling her. We are handling her. I took my phone and snapped a photo of the screen. Then I took a photo of the file list. Then I took a photo of the schedule board with no Claire written in red. You are not going to go out there. Are you? Rena asked, watching me. If you walk onto that stage, they will call the police. They have set it up so that any reaction you have proves their point. If you yell, you are crazy. If you cry, you are unstable. I know, I said. I looked at the image of the email on my phone. I thought about the $5 million pledge. I thought about the complicated narrative circulating in the restrooms. I thought about the handling of me. If I stormed the ballroom now, I would be playing their game. I would be the dramatic interruption they had already apologized for in advance. I would be the villain in their hero story. I am not going out there, I said. I put my phone back in my clutch. I am going to let them have their night. I am going to let them make their fake pledge. I am going to let them lie to 300 people. I looked at Rena. Because when I take this apart, I said, I don't want to just ruin the party. I want to ruin the lie. And to do that, I need more than a scene. I need evidence. I turned to the door. Thank you. Rena, delete the search history. Where are you going? She asked. To my car, I said. And then, to find out where they think they are getting $5 million. I slipped out of the AV booth, moving back into the shadows of the service corridor. I didn't look through the glass partition again. I didn't need to see them smiling. I had the picture in my head, and I would keep it there, burning cold and bright, until the moment I was ready to turn the lights out. I walked back to the car through the service lot, my heels making no sound on the damp asphalt. The night air was thick with the smell of the ocean and the exhaust from the idling catering trucks. A stark contrast to the perfumed atmosphere inside the club. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I unlocked my sedan, slid into the driver's seat, and locked the doors. For a long time, I just sat there. My hands were resting on the steering wheel, and I watched them tremble. It was a fine, rhythmic shaking that traveled up my wrists and into my elbows. It wasn't fear. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was the physical reaction to a sudden, violent shift in gravity. For 33 years, I had believed that my parents' cruelty was a byproduct of their high standards, that they were hard on me because they wanted me to be better. I had believed that if I just polished myself enough, if I became successful enough, I would finally fit into the frame. But sitting there in the dark, watching the valet attendants park luxury cars for the guests who had replaced me, I realized I had been wrong. It wasn't emotional. It was strategic. They didn't exclude me because they were disappointed in me. They excluded me because I was a risk, a liability, a loose thread in a tapestry they were frantically weaving to cover a hole in the wall. I reached for my phone. I didn't call my boyfriend, who would have offered soft, useless platitudes. I called Maya Lang. Maya answered on the second ring. She was a senior paralegal at a corporate litigation firm, a woman who viewed human emotion as a variable that could be managed with the right paperwork. "Claire," she said. Her voice was alert, even though it was past 8 o'clock. "I saw the live stream. Why aren't you on the stage?" "I was redirected," I said. The word felt foreign and cold in my mouth. "Redirected," Maya repeated. "Like a parcel. Like a security threat," I said. My name was flagged on the guest list. There was a note. "Do not admit. My mother scrubbed me from the program." Maya, she deleted the files. She told people I was mentally unstable so they wouldn't ask why I wasn't there. There was a silence on the line. I could hear the faint click of Maya typing something, perhaps closing a window on her screen to give me her full attention. "Okay," Maya said, her tone shifting from friend to counselor. "Take a breath. This is not a family spat. You don't call security on your daughter because you are annoyed. You call security because you are afraid." "Afraid of what?" I asked. "I did the work. I built the deck. I invited the donors." "That is the question," Maya said. "Claire, listen to me. People like your parents, people who live on perception, don't burn a bridge unless the person on the other side is holding a match. If they went to this much trouble to erase you, it means your presence contradicts the story they are selling." I looked out the windshield. A couple was walking toward the club entrance, laughing. "They are selling a legacy," I said. "The Ward Family Giving Initiative." "No," Maya said sharply. "That is the packaging. What is the product? What are they trying to sell that you complicate?" The question hung in the recycled air of the car. "What do I complicate?" "I know the math," I whispered. "I know they don't have $5 million to pledge. I know the foundation is new. I know." I trailed off. "You are the witness," Maya said. "You are the one person who knows the before and the after. Go home. Claire, do not text them. Do not email them. Go home, sleep, and tomorrow morning, stop thinking like a daughter. Start thinking like opposing counsel." I drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past, meaningless and distant. When I walked into my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights. I stripped off the black dress and left it in a heap on the floor. I didn't wash my face. I crawled into bed and lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence where my family should have been. I slept for 3 hours. A fitful, shallow rest broken by dreams of locked doors and silent phones. When I woke, the sun was gray and unforgiving against the blinds. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I made coffee, strong and black. I sat at my dining table and opened my laptop. I didn't check my email. I didn't check social media. I opened a new browser window and typed in the URL for the new initiative. Ward Legacy Circle. .org. The site had launched overnight. It was sleek, professional, and expensive. The landing page featured a high-resolution video of the ocean crashing against the rocks of Harbor Glen, overlaid with elegant serif text continuity, compassion, community. I clicked on the Our Story tab. A photo of my parents filled the screen. It was taken at their summer house, both of them wearing linen, looking windblown and noble. The text beside it was written in my mother's voice. I recognized the cadence, the excessive use of adjectives like steadfast and foundational. The Ward Legacy Circle was born from a desire to honor the memory of Daniel's late mother, Eleanor Ward. Following her passing in 2021, Daniel and Marlene Ward dedicated themselves to structuring a vehicle for change, carrying the torch of philanthropy that Eleanor was unable to light during her lifetime. I stopped reading. My coffee cup hovered halfway to my mouth. Unable to light during her lifetime. That was a lie. I closed my eyes and saw my grandmother, Eleanor Ward. She had been a woman of sharp wit and quiet generosity. She hated galas. She hated photographers, but she loved the community. I remember driving her in her old station wagon to the community center on the south side of town in 2018. I remembered her sitting at a folding table, writing a check for $10,000 to repair the roof of the youth library. "Don't tell your father," she had told me then, winking. "He thinks money should make noise. I think it should make a difference." I looked back at the screen. The website claimed the initiative began after she died. It claimed Daniel and Marlene were the architects. It erased 5 years of Eleanor's quiet giving that I had witnessed, giving that I had helped facilitate. Why lie about the timeline if they simply wanted credit? They could have said they were expanding her work, but they went out of their way to say she didn't do the work. They were claiming that the charitable assets were dormant until they took control. I grabbed a notepad. I wrote down timeline inconsistency, Eleanor's active giving versus website narrative. I needed public records. I needed to see the structure of the estate. I dressed quickly, slacks, a blazer, low heels, my armor. I drove downtown to the financial district. The law firm of Vane, Callaway Associates, occupied the 22nd floor of a glass tower that looked down on the harbor. This was the firm that had handled the Ward Family Trust for 40 years. Old Mr. Vane had been Eleanor's confidant. He had passed away 6 months ago, leaving the practice to his son, Hollis Vane. Hollis was my age. We had gone to prep school together before I transferred to public high school. He was soft-spoken, anxious, and perpetually trying to live up to a father who cast a very long shadow. I didn't have an appointment. I walked into the reception area, the plush carpet swallowing the sound of my steps. The receptionist looked up, surprised. "Claire," she said, "I didn't know you were coming in." "I was in the neighborhood," I lied. "Is Hollis in? I just need 5 minutes." She hesitated, glancing at the closed door of the corner office. "He is preparing for a deposition, but let me check." She buzzed him. A moment later, Hollis opened the door. He looked tired. His tie was loosened, and his sleeves were rolled up. When he saw me, his expression didn't register the usual warmth of an old classmate. It registered panic. "Claire," he said, stepping out but keeping one hand on the doorknob. "I wasn't expecting you." "I just need some clarity." "Hollis," I said, keeping my voice light. "I am helping my parents with the Legacy Circle rollout, and I realized I don't have the original articles of incorporation for the foundation or the estate closure documents regarding the charitable trust." It was a bluff. I wasn't helping them, but Hollis didn't know I had been banned from the club last night. Hollis shifted his weight. He looked at the receptionist, then back at me. "Come in," he said, stepping back. His office was a shrine to his father, mahogany bookshelves, leather chairs, framed degrees. Hollis sat behind the massive desk, looking small. "Claire," he started, linking his fingers together on the blotter. "I want to be helpful, but you know I can't release client files without authorization from the executor." "My father is the executor," I said, "and I am working for him. We are trying to verify the timeline for the press release. I just need to know when the charitable trust was officially activated. Was it before or after Eleanor passed?" Hollis blinked. A bead of sweat appeared at his hairline. "Well," he said, choosing his words with agonizing care, "the assets were reorganized after your grandmother passed. The original trust was dissolved, and the funds were moved into the new vehicle, the Legacy Circle." "Dissolved?" I asked. "Why, Eleanor had specific grants she was funding." "The executor has broad discretion," Hollis said quickly. Daniel felt that a consolidated approach was more efficient. He picked up a pen and started tapping it against the desk. "Look, Claire," he said, "I know this is awkward, with the situation." "What situation?" I asked. He looked up, confused. "The contest. As the contesting party, you have rights to discovery, of course, but we haven't received the formal motion yet, so I can't just hand over the file." The room went very still. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to roar in my ears. "The contesting party," I repeated slowly. Hollis froze. The pen stopped tapping. He looked at my face, really looked at it, and the color drained from his cheeks. "You," he stammered, "you filed the objection to the amendment." "I didn't file anything." "Hollis?" I said. "I don't know what you're talking about." Hollis stood up. He looked terrified. "I misspoke. I thought, please, Claire, forget I said that. I cannot discuss this. You need to leave." "Hollis," I said, standing up to meet him, "why do you think I am contesting the will? Is there a legal action attached to my name?" "I can't," he said, walking around the desk to usher me out. "Please, if my father were here, I can't. You need to talk to your parents, or your lawyer. But you are not represented by this firm in this matter. There is a conflict of interest." He opened the door. The receptionist was watching. "Talk to Daniel," Hollis said, his voice pleading. "Just talk to your father." I walked out of the office, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wasn't just a disappointment. I wasn't just an uninvited guest to the legal world. I was the contesting party. My parents or their lawyers had created a narrative where I was actively fighting them for the money. That explained the unstable rumors. If I was suing the estate, of course they would paint me as greedy and erratic. It inoculated them against anything I might say. If I spoke out about the foundation, it would look like a litigation tactic. But why would they think I was contesting it unless there was something to contest, unless Eleanor had left something for me, or for the community, that they had taken? I went to the nearest coffee shop and ordered another black coffee. I needed to stabilize. I sat at a corner table and pulled out my laptop again. I couldn't access the private legal files Hollis had. But foundations were 501c3 organizations. Their tax filings were public record. Eventually, since the Legacy Circle was brand new, their filings wouldn't be up yet. But the Northbridge Civic Partners, the fiscal sponsor I had seen on the draft documents Rena showed me, would have records. I searched for Northbridge Civic Partners. It was a donor-advised fund aggregator, a black box for charity. You put money in. You get the tax deduction immediately, but you don't have to decide where the money goes for years. It hides the source and the destination. I found a summary filing from the previous quarter on a watchdog site. It listed incoming pledges. There, nestled in a list of anonymous donations, was a line item that matched the date of the GALA announcement. Source Ward Family Trust. Amount $5 million. Status pending. Contingent. The pledge wasn't real money. It was a promise of money. Contingent on something else. They had announced a $5 million gift to the room last night. They had basked in the applause, but the money hadn't moved. It was stuck. Pending, I whispered to the screen. Why was it pending? My phone buzzed. An email notification. Sender Daniel Ward. Subject, let's not make this ugly. I stared at the subject line. It was a masterclass in manipulation. It implied that I was the one making it ugly. It shifted the blame before I had even opened the message. I clicked it open. Claire, we missed you last night. It was a difficult decision, but your mother and I agreed it was necessary to protect the integrity of the launch. We know you have been under a lot of stress lately, and we didn't want the pressure of the evening to trigger another episode. There it was again. Creating the paper trail. We want to move forward. We are a family. Let's meet for brunch tomorrow at Marrow Bay. 11 o'clock. Just the three of us. No lawyers. No drama. We have a proposal for you regarding your future role. Please confirm. Dad, it wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. And the line, no lawyers, confirmed exactly what Hollis had let slip. They were worried about legal action. They wanted to settle me. They wanted to buy my silence before I even knew what I was selling. I was about to reply when a text message came through from Tessa Klein. It was a screenshot. Tessa, look at this slide. They showed this during the breakfast presentation this morning. Unbelievable. I opened the image. It was a photo of the slide projected on the massive screen in the Larkhaven ballroom. The header read, "The Ward Legacy Circle built on family unity." Below it was a family photo. It was from my cousin's wedding 3 years ago. In the original, I was standing on the left, next to my mother, laughing, in the slide. The photo had been cropped. I was gone. My mother's shoulder was slightly blurred where they had used a digital tool to erase my arm. The composition was centered on Daniel and Marlene, looking like a power couple, alone in their benevolence. They hadn't just cropped me out. They had reconstructed the image to make it look like I was never there. I felt a surge of nausea, followed immediately by a cold, hard resolve. They were erasing me because I didn't fit the brand. The brand was safe. The brand was generous. The brand was uncomplicated. If I was there, I was a reminder of the public university. I was a reminder of the career I built without their help. I was a reminder of Eleanor, who liked dirt under her fingernails and hated galas. And most dangerous of all, I was a reminder that they were liars. If I reacted now, if I sent a furious email, if I posted the original photo on social media screaming about the edit, I would play right into their hands. See, they would say to the donors, "She is unstable. She is attacking her own parents. This is why we had to exclude her." I couldn't be the daughter. I couldn't be the victim. I had to be the mirror. I opened the email reply to my father. "Dad, I'll be there. 11 o'clock. Claire." I didn't apologize. I didn't explain. I just confirmed. I closed the laptop. I had 24 hours to prepare. I didn't need a lawyer yet. I needed information. I took the notepad where I had written timeline inconsistency. Underneath it, I wrote a new question. The question that I would ask them over poached eggs and mimosas while they tried to gaslight me into submission. What did you change after Eleanor died? Because something had changed. The will, the trust, the mission, something had been altered in the dark. And they were terrified I would find the switch. I stood up and gathered my things. My hands weren't shaking anymore. The grief was gone. The confusion was gone. I was finally perfectly calm. Marrow Bay was the kind of establishment that prided itself on aggressive minimalism. The walls were whitewashed brick. The tables were reclaimed wood that snagged your sweater. And the menu listed ingredients rather than meals. It was 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. The air filled with the low, polite roar of the Harbor Glen elite debriefing their weekends over $20 avocado toast. I arrived exactly on time. I wore a navy blazer and jeans, my hair pulled back, my face scrubbed clean of the heavy makeup I had considered wearing as armor. I wanted to look lucid. I wanted to look undeniably, boringly sane. My parents were already seated at a corner booth, the prime real estate of the restaurant, bathed in the natural light pouring through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Marlene was impossible to miss, in a sea of casual cashmere and designer athleisure. My mother was wearing a lavender boucle suit with gold buttons and a matching fascinator that looked like a frantic bird nesting in her hair. It was an outfit for a royal wedding, not a brunch. She was overdressed for daylight. a walking signal that she was still operating on the high-frequency energy of the gala. She was performing importance. Daniel sat beside her, reading the financial section of the Sunday paper on his tablet. He wore a crisp polo shirt, his silver hair brushed back, looking every inch the benevolent patriarch. I approached the table. My heart was a cold, hard knot in my chest, but my hands were steady. "Good morning," I said. Marlene looked up, her face arranging itself instantly into a mask of tragic tenderness. She reached out a hand, her bracelets clattering. "Claire," she breathed, as if I had just returned from a war zone rather than a 20-minute drive from my apartment. "Oh, honey, you look rested." The pause before the word rested was heavy. It implied I had needed rest. It implied I had been broken. "I am fine, Mom," I said. Sliding into the chair opposite them, I didn't take her hand. "I see the gala was a success. The photos are everywhere." "It was lovely," Daniel said, setting his tablet down. He didn't smile. He looked at me with a flat, clinical assessment. "A good turnout, effective fundraising. It is a shame you couldn't be part of it." "I was part of it," I said, unfolding my napkin. "Until yesterday afternoon." "Let's not do this," Marlene said quickly, her voice dropping to a stage whisper. She glanced around the room, checking to see if anyone was watching. "We are here to have a nice family meal. We are here to move forward." A waiter appeared, pouring water. We ordered quickly coffee for everyone. An omelet for Daniel, a salad for Marlene. I ordered toast, knowing I wouldn't eat it. Once the waiter retreated, the silence at the table grew thick. It wasn't the comfortable silence of family. It was the tense, pressurized silence of a deposition. Daniel reached into his leather briefcase, which was resting on the banquette beside him. He pulled out a manila folder. It was thin, crisp, and labeled in his distinctive, jagged handwriting, "Family Boundaries." He slid it across the wooden table. It stopped just short of my water glass. "Your mother and I have been doing a lot of thinking," Daniel said. His tone was reasonable, measured, the voice of a man making a hard but necessary business decision. "We realize that we have been unfair to you. Claire," I looked at the folder, then at him. "Unfair how?" "By putting so much pressure on you." Marlene interjected. She leaned forward, her eyes swimming with manufactured empathy. "We know how hard you try, but this world, the foundation, the scrutiny, the public expectations, it is a lot. It is too much for someone who is already struggling." "I am not struggling," I said. "I run a marketing department. I manage a team of 12 people. I managed this launch until you locked me out of the system." "Open the folder." "Claire," Daniel said. I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of heavy, cream-colored bond paper. It was a formal letter, typed in the same serif font used for the GALA program. "To the board of the Ward Legacy Circle and Northbridge Civic Partners, I, Claire Ward, voluntarily decline any official role, governance, or operational involvement in the Ward Legacy Circle. I acknowledge that my previous contributions were advisory only, and that I have no claim to the decision-making processes of the Foundation. I am stepping back to focus on my personal health and well-being." At the bottom of the page was a date 3 days ago, and below the date was my signature. I stared at it, the loops of the C, the sharp point of the W, the way the D trailed off at the end. It was my signature. It looked exactly like the way I signed checks, the way I signed leases, but I had never seen this document in my life. The world seemed to tilt slightly to the left. I didn't gasp. I didn't shove the paper back at them. I went very still, my eyes narrowing as I studied the ink. "I didn't sign this," I said quietly. "You signed it last week," Daniel said. He took a sip of his coffee, his eyes locked on mine. "When you came by the house to drop off the vendor contracts, you were agitated. You said you wanted out. You don't remember." "I was at the house," I said. "I dropped off the contracts. I had tea. We talked about the floral arrangements. I never signed a resignation letter." I ran my thumb lightly over the signature, The ink felt flat. When a person signs a document, the pen moves with variable speed, fast on the curves, slow on the turns. The pressure changes. This signature had a uniform, heavy thickness throughout. It lacked the microscopic feathering of a ballpoint pen moving quickly across paper. It looked drawn. It looked like someone had placed a piece of tracing paper over an old birthday card or a check I had written them, traced the lines, and then carefully filled them in on this document. "It looks like my signature," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "But the pressure points are off. It looks traced." Marlene let out a small, sharp gasp. She brought a hand to her chest. "Claire, are you accusing your father of forgery?" "I am stating a fact," I said. "I did not sign this. This is a lie." "This is exactly what we were afraid of," Daniel said. He shook his head, looking down at his plate as if he were deeply weary. "The paranoia, the rewriting of history." "We did this to protect you," Marlene said softly. She reached across the table again, her fingers hovering near the folder. "We knew that if the donors saw you, in your current state, it would damage your reputation. We wanted to give you a graceful exit, a way to save face." "My current state?" I asked. "What state is that, exactly?" Marlene looked at me with wide, sad eyes. "After your episode, we couldn't risk it." I froze. The word hung in the air between us, suspended over the brunch table like a toxic cloud. "Episode." "What episode?" I asked. My voice was very low. "Honey," Marlene said, glancing at the table next to us to ensure they were witnessing her maternal concern. "Please, let's not relive it. The phone calls, the crying. The night you came over and, well, you were not yourself. You were screaming about the money, about Eleanor." I stared at her. My mind raced backward through the last month. I had never called them crying. I had never screamed about money. I had been professional, efficient, perhaps a little tired, but completely in control. There was no episode. It wasn't an exaggeration. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a fiction. They were planting a memory that didn't exist, anchoring it in reality by discussing it as a known fact. "That never happened," I said. "I never did that." "See?" Daniel said to Marlene. "She is blocking it out, just like Dr. Aris said she would." Dr. Aris. They had a name. They had a doctor involved. Or was that a lie too? I realized the trap. It was a perfect, diabolical circle. If I got angry now, if I stood up and shouted that they were liars, if I caused a scene in this crowded restaurant, I would be proving the episode. I would be the unstable daughter attacking her loving, patient parents. If I denied it calmly, they would just shake their heads and say I was in denial, creating a he said she said that they would win because they were the wards of Larkhaven. And I was just the daughter who didn't fit the room. They were building a cage out of concern. They were effectively neutralizing me as a witness by discrediting my mind. I closed the folder. I placed my hands flat on top of it. "Okay," I said. Daniel blinked. He hadn't expected that. "Okay. If that is your narrative," I said, "I understand the position you are taking." "It isn't a narrative, Claire," Daniel said, his jaw tightening. "It is reality." "I have a question," I said. I didn't let him derail me. I needed to pivot. I needed to see where the real fear was buried. Not about the letter, about the foundation. "We are not discussing business," Marlene said. "Not today." "What did you change after Eleanor died?" I asked. The reaction was microscopic, but it was there. Daniel's jaw muscles bunched. A tiny vein pulsed in his temple. Marlene's hand, which had been reaching for her water glass, froze for a fraction of a second before continuing the motion. "I don't know what you mean," Daniel said. His voice had lost the concerned father timbre. It was cold again. "The website says the initiative started after she passed," I said. "But we know she was funding grants for years. You told Hollis Vane that the assets were reorganized. You told me she wanted continuity. But Eleanor hated continuity. She liked disruption. She liked change. So why would she leave everything to a legacy fund that does nothing but host parties? Daniel leaned forward. His eyes were hard, dark flint. Your grandmother was a complicated woman, he said. Toward the end, she wasn't thinking clearly. She made impulsive drafts, notes, nothing legal. We simply honored her true intentions, not her confused ones. Her confused ones, I repeated. She wanted this family to stand for something, Daniel said. She wanted continuity, not disruption. He looked at me when he said the word disruption. It wasn't about the grants. It was about me. You are the disruption, his eyes said. You are the impulsive draft we are trying to correct. I see, I said. I picked up the folder. Put that back, Daniel said sharply. It is addressed to me, I said. Or rather, it is from me. If I signed it, surely I can keep a copy for my records. We need to file it with the board, Daniel said, reaching for it. I will make a copy and send it back. I lied. I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest. Thank you for breakfast. I am not hungry. Claire, Marlene said, her voice rising, breaking the performative calm. If you walk out of here with that, you are making a choice. We are offering you support. We are offering to pay for your treatment. Don't throw this away. Treatment. They were really committing to the bit. I am fine, Mom, I said. I looked at her, really looked at her. Beneath the hat and the makeup, I saw fear. I saw a woman who was terrified that the world would find out she was hollow. Enjoy the omelet. I turned and walked out of the restaurant. I felt their eyes on my back. I felt the eyes of the other diners, wondering why the ward girl was leaving so abruptly. I didn't care. I walked 3 blocks before I stopped. I leaned against the brick wall of an alleyway and breathed. My hands were shaking again. But this time, it was adrenaline. I had the folder. I had the forgery. I pulled out my phone and texted Maya. Got the letter. It is a forgery. Meeting you now. We met at a concrete bench overlooking the harbor, far away from the polished decks of the yacht club. The wind was whipping off the water. Cold and biting, Maya read the letter. She held it up to the sunlight. It is a trace job, she said instantly. Look at the thickness of the loop on the L. A pen doesn't do that naturally. Someone used a lightbox or just pressed really hard over a master copy. They said I had an episode, I said, staring at the gray water. They told me I came to their house screaming. They are building a mental health file on me. Maya. Of course they are, Maya said. She put the letter back in the folder. It is the classic move. Discredit the whistleblower. If you speak out about the money, they release a statement saying they are deeply concerned about your mental state and that your accusations are just delusions. It kills your credibility instantly. So I can't say anything, I said. I can't tell the donors. I can't tell the press. Not yet, Maya said. And not without proof that goes beyond, he said, she said. You need to anchor yourself in bureaucracy. Do not fight them on the emotional front. Fight them on the paperwork. How? Send a formal request to the executor, your father, for the original instrument of the trust. Maya said, send it via certified mail. Do not email. Do not text. Make it look like a lawyer wrote it, even if I can't officially represent you yet. Demand the unredacted will and the trust amendment documents. He won't give them to me, I said. I know, Maya said, but his refusal is evidence. If he refuses a beneficiary request, that is a breach of fiduciary duty. We stack the breaches, we build a wall of refusal, and then we find a judge. She handed the folder back to me. Go home, she said. Lock your door. Don't answer their calls. If they come to your apartment, do not open the door. They are scared. Claire, and scared people are dangerous. I drove home. The drive felt different than it had yesterday. Yesterday, I was a victim. Today, I was a target. My apartment building was a quiet, mid-century block on the edge of town. I parked in my spot and walked up the stairs to the 2nd floor. There was a package on my doormat. It wasn't a box from Amazon. It was a small, yellow padded envelope. There was no shipping label, no return address, just my name, Claire, written in black marker. I froze on the landing. I looked around. The hallway was empty. I picked it up. It was light. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and threw the deadbolt. I carried the envelope to the kitchen table. I grabbed a pair of scissors. My hands trembled as I sliced the top open. I tipped it over. A silver USB drive clattered onto the table. Along with it fell a yellow sticky note. I picked up the note. The handwriting was jagged, hurried. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't my parents'. It wasn't Graham's. It read, "You were supposed to be there. They lied." I stared at the words. You were supposed to be there. I grabbed my laptop. I sat down, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I plugged the USB drive into the port. A folder popped up on the screen. Larkhaven_backup_09. I opened it. There were 3 files. 2 PDFs and 1 audio file. I opened the first PDF. It was an email chain between Marlene and the board of directors of the Larkhaven Club. Date 2 weeks ago. From Marlene Ward. To board secretary, subject security concerns regarding GALA. We have reason to believe our daughter may attempt to disrupt the proceedings. She has been erratic. We request full discretion. We are arranging for a private security detail to handle any outbursts. It is imperative that the guests do not see her. They had been planning this for weeks. While I was editing their video, while I was designing their seating chart, they were emailing the venue to treat me like a threat. I opened the second PDF. It was a scan of a handwritten ledger. It looked like a page from a guest book or a donation log. At the top, in Eleanor's handwriting, unmistakable, spidery and sharp, was a list. Community grants, 2020 library, $10,000, food bank, $15,000. Claire's project, $50,000, pending transfer, Claire's project. Eleanor had earmarked money for me. For something we were working on, I remembered we had talked about starting a literacy program. She had listened. She had written it down. And then, I clicked on the audio file. It was short, 20 seconds. The sound quality was muffled, like a phone recording from inside a pocket or a purse. There was the background hum of a large room, the clinking of china. Then, Marlene's voice cut through the noise. It was sharp, hissed. I don't care what she says. If Claire shows up, we redirect. If she pushes, we document. We just need to get through the pledge. Once the money is committed, it doesn't matter what she remembers. A man's voice, Daniel replied. Lower. And the addendum. Marlene again. Gone. Burned it this morning. There is no proof it ever existed. The recording ended. I sat there in the silence of my kitchen. The refrigerator hummed. A car drove by outside. Gone. Burned it this morning. The addendum. The thing Hollis Vane had been so terrified to talk about. The thing Eleanor had written. They had destroyed Eleanor's final wishes. They had erased my grandmother's voice just like they had erased my face from the photos. And they had done it for money. For the pledge. For the legacy. I felt a pressure building behind my eyes. Hot and stinging. I put my head in my hands. I cried. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the laptop. I just let the tears come. They were tears of pure, unadulterated grief. I wasn't grieving the money. I wasn't grieving the gala. I was grieving the parents I thought I had. I was grieving the hope that this was all a terrible mistake, that they were just stressed, that they loved me deep down. They didn't love me. They managed me. I was an obstacle to be redirected. I was a document to be shredded. I cried for 10 minutes. I let the salt taste run into my mouth. I let my shoulders shake. Then, the tears stopped. I wiped my face with the back of my hand. I stood up and walked to the sink. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were red, but they were clear. Okay, I said to the empty room. I walked back to the table. I looked at the USB drive. This was the hinge. This was the weapon. I didn't just have a suspicion anymore. I had a crime. Forgery is a crime. Destruction of legal documents is a crime. Fraud is a crime. I wasn't the unstable daughter. I was the witness to a felony. I went to my bedroom and pulled a large, clean whiteboard out of my closet, a remnant from my consulting days. I propped it up against the wall. I grabbed a black marker. I wrote the campaign. Underneath, I started 3 columns: timeline, names, motives. I wrote down Hollis Vane. I wrote down Northbridge Civic Partners. I wrote down the addendum. I wrote down Marlene, burned. I wasn't going to call them. I wasn't going to meet them for brunch. I wasn't going to beg for my place in the family. They wanted a legacy. Fine. I would give them one. I would make sure the ward name was remembered exactly for what it was. I uncapped the red marker and circled the word addendum. If they burned it, that meant they physically destroyed the paper, but lawyers make copies. Secretaries scan files. Paralegals archive emails. Nothing is ever truly gone. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Maya. I called the number on the business card I had picked up yesterday morning. The one I hadn't used yet. Evan Rourke, I whispered. The investigative journalist. I dialed. I met Evan Rourke in a diner on the south side of Harbor Glen, a place that smelled of burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. It was the kind of establishment my parents would only enter if they were running for office and needed a photo opportunity with real people. Evan was sitting in a booth near the back. A laptop open in front of him. He didn't look like a crusader. He looked tired. He wore a gray sweater that had seen better days, and his hairline was receding in a way that suggested he pulled at it when he was writing. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I sat down and slid the manila folder across the chipped laminate table. I am not here to pitch you a sob story, I said. I am here to give you a felony. Evan looked at the folder, then at me. He took a sip of his black coffee. Claire Ward, he said. I saw the coverage of the GALA. Beautiful dress. Shame you weren't in it. Open the folder, I said. He opened it. He looked at the letter, the declined involvement letter with the traced signature. He studied it for a long moment, his eyes narrowing. Then I placed the USB drive on top of the paper. There is an audio file on there, I said. Recorded backstage at the Larkhaven Club. It is my mother instructing staff to redirect me if I arrived and admitting to destroying a legal document she called the addendum. Evan's eyebrows went up. He plugged the drive into his laptop. He put on a pair of headphones, listened for 20 seconds, and then took them off. He looked different now. The fatigue was gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory focus. Destroying an addendum, he repeated, to a will, to a charitable trust. I think, I said, my grandmother, Eleanor Ward, she died 3 years ago. My parents claim they are honoring her legacy. I have reason to believe they are hijacking it. Evan leaned back against the red vinyl booth. He tapped his pen against the table. You have a forged resignation and a recording of an admission of guilt, he said. That is strong, but it is not a story yet. It is a lawsuit. Why bring it to me? Because a lawsuit takes years, I said. And they are raising $5 million right now. They are using false pretenses to solicit donations from half the city. If I sue them, they will seal the records and settle. If you write it, the money stops. Evan nodded slowly. You want to kill the funding? I want to stop the fraud, I corrected him. Listen to me, Claire, Evan said. He leaned in, his voice dropping. I have written about people like your parents for 20 years. The philanthropy theater crowd. They are Teflon. They have layers of lawyers, PR fixers, and social capital that acts like armor. You can show me a forged signature, and they will produce an expert witness who says it is genuine. You can show me a recording, and they will say it was taken out of context. So you won't help me, I said, reaching for the folder. He put his hand on it to stop me. I didn't say that, he said. I am saying that elite scandals don't fall apart because of general bad behavior. They fall apart on a hinge, one undeniable structural point where the lie cannot hold. We need to find the hinge. We need the document they destroyed, or at least proof of what it said. They burned it, I said. My mother said so on the tape. People like Marlene Ward don't burn leverage unless they are terrified, Evan said. And lawyers never destroy the only copy. Who is the counsel? Hollis Vane, I said. Vane, Callaway and Associates. Evan let out a low whistle. Old money protecting old money. Hollis is weak, though. He is terrified of his father's ghost. If we press him, he might crack. But we need more than this. He tapped the folder. Keep digging, Evan said. Find out where the money is actually going. If the foundation is a sham, the money has to move somewhere. Follow the cash. I left the diner with a mission. Evan Rourke wasn't going to save me. He was going to publish the autopsy. But I had to provide the body. I drove back to my apartment, my mind racing. Follow the cash. As I unlocked my door, my phone buzzed. It was Rena Mercado. Claire, she whispered. She sounded like she was hiding in a closet. I can't talk long. I just wanted you to know. The board is here. The board of the club, I asked, dropping my keys on the counter. Yes, they are calling staff into the office one by one. They are making us sign retroactive non-disclosure agreements regarding the GALA, specifically regarding guest list management and backstage operations. My grip on the phone tightened. Retroactive NDE, as that is barely legal. They are offering a $500 bonus if we sign it today, Rena said. Everyone is signing. Claire, they are scared of losing their jobs. I haven't gone in yet. I told them I had a vendor delivery. Don't sign it, I said. Rena, if you sign it, they own you. Tell them you need to have your lawyer look at it. Even if you don't have one, it will buy you time. Why are they doing this? She asked, her voice trembling. Because they know I know, I said. They are trying to plug the leaks. Thank you. Rena, be careful. I hung up. The retroactive NDAs were a sign of panic. My parents were moving fast to seal the perimeter. They knew the unstable daughter narrative might not hold if too many waiters heard Marlene ordering the destruction of evidence. I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. Maya was already online, a green dot next to her name. I video called her. Hey, Maya said. She was at her office, surrounded by stacks of files. How did it go with the journalist? He wants a hinge, I said. He wants the smoking gun, and Rena just told me the club is forcing staff to sign NDAs. They are scrubbing the crime scene. Maya. Okay, Maya said, adjusting her glasses. Let's look at the structure. You said the foundation is called the Ward Legacy Circle. Did you find their EIN? Not yet, I said. Their website just says, in partnership with Northbridge Civic Partners. Maya typed furiously. Northbridge Civic Partners. I know them. We have litigated against funds held by them before. Claire, Northbridge isn't a partner. It is a fiscal shield. What does that mean? It is a donor-advised fund sponsor. Maya explained. Technically, when your parents donate to the Legacy Circle, they are actually donating to Northbridge. Northbridge takes legal ownership of the money immediately, which gives your parents the tax write-off. But then Northbridge holds the money in a sub-account that your parents still control as advisors. They can let that money sit there for 10 years without spending a dime on charity, all while claiming they gave millions. So the $5 million pledge, I said, realizing the scam. They pledge it to Northbridge. They get the tax deduction, but the money never actually goes to the community. It just sits in an account they control. Exactly, Maya said. And here's the kicker. Northbridge is a black box. Their donor lists are not public. If your parents move money out of Northbridge to, say, a consulting firm they own for administrative fees, no one sees it on the public 990 form. It is a shell game. So they could pledge $5 million, I said. Move it to Northbridge, and then slowly funnel it back to themselves as salaries or expenses. Hypothetically, yes, Maya said. And if they are in debt, as you suspect, that tax deduction is worth a fortune. Plus the social capital, they get to play the philanthropists while using the money to service their own lifestyle. It was brilliant and disgusting. It was exactly the kind of continuity Daniel had talked about, the continuity of their comfort. But we can't prove the money flow without a warrant, I said. No, Maya said. But we can prove the intent. If we can find that addendum. Claire. If Eleanor put a condition on the money like funds must be distributed within 1 year, or funds cannot be used for administrative costs, then using Northbridge is a violation of the trust. It would strip them of control. I needed that addendum. I am going to check the photos, I said. I have a contact at the event photography company. Maybe there is something in the raw files. I hung up and texted the photographer, a freelancer named Ben, who I had hired for 3 previous Brightline events. He liked me because I always paid his invoices on time. Hey Ben, long shot. Can you send me the link to the full raw gallery from the Larkhaven Gala? I need to grab some shots of the decor for my portfolio. The official link is curated. 10 minutes later, he replied. Sure thing. Claire, don't share the link. Though, Marlene was super specific about approving every image. He sent a Dropbox link. I opened it. There were 3,000 images. I started scrolling. The first 500 were standard step and repeat shots. My parents smiling, the mayor smiling, the centerpieces, the food. I scrolled past the legacy moment on stage. There was the slide with my cropped-out body. Seeing it again made my stomach clench. But I pushed past it. I was looking for the margins. I was looking for the moments between the poses. I found a series of shots taken near the backstage curtain. The lighting was bad shadowy and orange. The photographer must have been testing his exposure. There was Graham, looking stressed. There was Rena, holding a clipboard. And then, image number 2415. It was a candid shot of Marlene. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was standing near a service table, her back half turned to the room. She was holding a glass of champagne in one hand. In the other hand, she was clutching a thick, cream-colored envelope. I zoomed in. The resolution was high. Ben used top-tier gear. The pixels sharpened. The envelope had writing on it in black felt-tip pen. E. Addendum. Confidential. I froze. E. Eleanor Ward. And right below it, in smaller script, do not file. I stared at the screen. My mother was holding the document she claimed to have burned. The timestamp on the photo was 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes before the doors opened. 15 minutes before she texted me not to come. She hadn't burned it in the morning. She had it with her at the club. Why bring it to the club? Because she had to show it to someone. You don't bring a confidential legal document to a gala unless you need to prove something to a stakeholder or threaten someone. I took a screenshot. I zoomed in on the envelope until the words E. Addendum filled my monitor. I printed the photo. The ink was still warm when I grabbed my car keys. I wasn't going to the club. I was going back to Hollis Vane. Hollis's office was quieter in the late afternoon. The receptionist had already left for the day, leaving the lobby empty. I walked straight to his door and knocked once, hard. Come in, Hollis called. Sounding weary, I opened the door. Hollis was packing his briefcase. He looked up, and his face fell. Claire, he said, I told you, I can't discuss this. I am not here to discuss the will. Hollis, I said. I walked over to his desk and placed the photo face up on top of his leather blotter. I am here to ask you why my mother was holding the document you said didn't exist. Hollis looked at the photo. He squinted. Then his eyes widened. He recognized the envelope. I saw the recognition in the way his throat bobbed as he swallowed. That is, he started, then stopped. That is the E.W. addendum, I said. The one Eleanor wrote, the one you told me was reorganized. My mother was carrying it around the Larkhaven Club last night. Why? Hollis. Why would she have the original copy of a trust amendment at a party? I don't know, Hollis whispered. He sank back into his chair. I think you do, I said. I kept my voice calm, precise. I channeled every ounce of professional authority I had. I think she brought it to show Daniel. Or maybe she brought it to show you, were you there? Hollis. He shook his head frantically. I wasn't there. I refused to go. Why did you refuse? Because I told them it was a mistake, Hollis burst out. The dam broke. He looked like a man who had been holding his breath for 6 months. I told Daniel that if he launched the legacy circle without resolving the condition, it would invalidate the trust, but he said he could handle it. He said he could bury the condition. What condition? I asked. I leaned my hands on the desk, looming over him. What did Eleanor write? Hollis looked at the door, then at me. He looked at the photo of the envelope. Transparency, he said. The word came out like a sigh. Transparency. Eleanor she was disappointed in Daniel, Hollis said, his voice dropping to a murmur. In the last year of her life, she felt he was using her name to buy status. She drafted the addendum 3 weeks before she died. It stated that the charitable trust would only transfer to Daniel's control if the foundation maintained absolute transparency of governance and included a community stewardship checks and balances clause. And if it didn't, I asked, if the foundation was used as I believe her words were social climbing vehicle. Hollis winced. Then control of the assets would bypass Daniel entirely. And go to whom? I asked. Hollis looked at me. His eyes were sad. To the person she named as the steward, he said. You. The room went silent. I felt the floor tilt. Me? I whispered. She named you the steward of the trust. Hollis said. You wouldn't get the money for yourself, it is charitable funds, but you would have veto power over every grant. You would control the checkbook. You would have the power to audit Daniel. It all clicked into place. The puzzle was complete. They didn't exclude me because I was messy. They didn't exclude me because I was embarrassing. They excluded me because my presence was the trigger. If I was involved in the foundation, if I was listed as a founder. If I was on the board, then the steward was present. But if they erased me, if they could prove I had declined involvement, if they could prove I was unstable and therefore unfit to be a steward, then they could bypass the clause. They needed me to be gone. They needed me to be broken, because as long as I was standing, I was the only thing between them and total control of Eleanor's money. That is why they forged the resignation letter, I said, to prove I walked away. Hollis went pale. Resignation letter. There is no resignation letter. There is, I said. Daniel showed it to me this morning, dated 3 days ago. Hollis stood up. He looked genuinely horrified. Claire, I never prepared a resignation letter. If they filed a document like that, that is fraud. That is direct tampering with the execution of a trust. I know, I said. And you are the lawyer of record. Hollis, if this comes out, and you stayed silent, you will be disbarred, or worse. Hollis began to pace behind his desk. He was sweating now. I didn't know about the letter, he muttered. I told them to settle with you. I told them to bring you in. I didn't know they were going to erase you. They are doing more than erasing me, I said. They are erasing Eleanor. I picked up the photo. I need a copy of the addendum. Hollis, I said. I know you have a digital backup. You are too scared of your father to delete everything. He stopped pacing. He looked at me. I can't give it to you, he said. Privilege. Then don't give it to me, I said. Leave it on the desk while you go to the bathroom. I will take a picture. You can say you were negligent. It is better than saying you were complicit. Hollis looked at the door. He looked at his computer. I have to go check the fax machine, he said, his voice trembling. He walked out of the office. I moved around the desk. His computer was unlocked. I didn't have to search hard. The file was in a folder marked EW_estate_sensitive. I opened the document, EW_addendum_executed.pdf. I didn't try to email it. That would leave a log. I took my phone out and photographed every page of the screen. 5 pages. Page 3. The steward shall be Claire Ward. Page 4. In the event of opaque governance, the steward assumes sole discretion. I heard footsteps in the hall. I closed the window. I stepped back to the front of the desk. Hollis walked back in. He didn't look at me. He went straight to his briefcase. "You should go, Claire," he said. "I have a late meeting." "Thank you. Hollis," I said. I walked out of the building into the cool evening air. I felt lighter than I had in years. I wasn't just the daughter anymore. I was the steward. Eleanor had trusted me. She had seen me. My phone buzzed. It was an email alert. Sender, the Ward Legacy Circle. Subject, an intimate evening of gratitude. I opened it. It was a blast email to the Inner Circle donor list, a list I was still secretly on because I had set up the MailChimp account with my personal email as a backup admin. Dear friends, following the tremendous success of our launch, Daniel and Marlene Ward invite you to an exclusive salon night this coming Friday. We will be finalizing the charter member pledges and closing the founding circle. Spaces limited. Final commitments required. Friday. That was 2 days away. They were rushing. They wanted to lock in the money before anyone asked questions. They wanted to close the founding circle, which meant sealing the legal structure so that even if the steward showed up later, the money was already gone, committed to Northbridge or some other dark hole. I stared at the invitation. Location, the Ward residence, their house, my childhood home. A salon night meant 50 people maximum, intimate, no security guards with tablets, no redirect notices, just a cocktail party in the living room where everyone knew everyone. If I showed up there, I wouldn't be a face in a crowd. I would be the elephant in the room. My strategy formed in seconds. It was sharp and cold. I wasn't going to leak the story to Evan Rourke before the party, if I did that. They would cancel the event and lawyer up. They would hide. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to stand in front of their friends and make their speech. I needed them to commit the fraud in public. And then, I needed to walk in. I texted Evan, "I have the hinge. I have the addendum. They are hosting a salon night on Friday. Are you free?" He replied instantly, "I can get a +1 invite from a source. I'm in." I texted Maya, "Friday night, the Ward House. Bring the paperwork for a restraining order against the trust assets. We are going to serve them during the appetizers." I walked to my car. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the pavement. I wasn't going to have a meltdown. I wasn't going to scream. I was going to attend the party, and I was going to introduce them to the steward. The Ward residence in Harbor Glen was not designed for intimacy. It was designed for acoustics. The high ceilings of the foyer amplified the sound of heels on marble, and the open-plan living room, with its wall of glass overlooking the Pacific, turned every conversation into a performance. Tonight, my parents had transformed our family home into a showroom of status. I pulled my car up to the valet stand at the bottom of the driveway. The gravel crunching beneath the tires sounded like gunfire in the quiet coastal air. A young man in a white jacket opened my door. He didn't know who I was. To him, I was just another guest in a black dress arriving for the salon night. I stepped out. The air smelled of jasmine and money. There were discreet signs placed along the walkway, lit by tasteful uplights. The Ward Legacy Circle. Please proceed to the terrace. I walked up the stone steps. My heart was beating a slow, heavy rhythm, like a war drum, but my face was a mask of absolute calm. I had spent the last 48 hours rehearsing this entry. I had practiced my smile in the mirror, not the eager, desperate smile of the daughter trying to please, but the polite, detached smile of an auditor arriving to check the books. I was invited this time. That was the trap. After our brunch, where I had taken the forged letter and walked away without screaming, my parents had assumed I was pacified. They assumed I had accepted the narrative of my own instability. They had sent the invitation via email the next morning, a digital olive branch that read, "Join us. Let's heal." They wanted me there so they could display me. They needed the troubled daughter to stand silently in the corner, looking medicated and grateful, living proof that the Wards were a benevolent family who took care of their own broken things. I reached the front door. It was open. The house was full. 50 people, the absolute upper crust of Harbor Glen society, were milling about with crystal flutes of champagne. I saw the mayor, I saw the partners from the venture capital firms. I saw the people who could write six-figure checks without checking their bank balances. A waiter passed me with a silver tray. I took a cocktail napkin. It was embossed with gold foil legacy circle. Continuity, compassion. I crushed the napkin in my hand. Claire. The voice came from my left. It was Mrs. Gable, the donor I had overheard in the club hallway. She was wearing pearls the size of grapes. She looked at me with a mixture of surprise and morbid curiosity, as if she were inspecting a car wreck. "I am so glad to see you," she said, leaning in. "We were all so worried on Saturday. The rumors were just awful." "Rumors?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Well," she lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "people were saying you had a breakdown, that you were unfit to attend. I told them, Claire is a professional. She wouldn't miss a launch unless it was serious." She waited for me to confirm it. She wanted the details. She wanted me to say, "Yes, it has been so hard. Thank you for your support." I looked her in the eye. "That is interesting," I said. "I wasn't aware I had a breakdown. I was actually working on a compliance issue regarding the Foundation's charter. That is part of what I'm here to clarify tonight." Mrs. Gable blinked. "Compliance issue." "It is all very technical," I said, smiling the audit smile. "Enjoy the champagne." I moved past her. I felt her eyes boring into my back. I didn't care. I wasn't here to make friends. I was here to plant seeds of doubt. I navigated through the room. I saw Evan Rourke near the fireplace. He was dressed in a suit that looked slightly too large for him, holding a glass of sparkling water. He was talking to a real estate developer, nodding intensely. He caught my eye for a fraction of a second and gave a microscopic nod. He was recording. Maya was near the patio doors. She was talking to Tessa Klein. Tessa looked regal in navy blue. Maya looked fierce. She had a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. It contained the motion for a temporary restraining order against the trust assets, drafted but not yet filed. We weren't serving them tonight. We were just letting the threat of the paperwork exist in the room. My phone buzzed in my clutch. I checked it discreetly. "Rena, I am not there, but I hacked the admin log. They are trying to delete the backstage folder from the club server right now. They are scrubbing the metadata. Be careful. They were erasing the footprints while the party was still going on." "Claire." I felt a hand on my elbow. It was a grip I knew well, firm. Possessive, with perfectly manicured nails digging into the tender flesh of my arm. I turned. Marlene was there. She looked magnificent and terrifying. She was wearing a cream-colored gown that draped elegantly over her frame, and her hair was coiffed into a helmet of perfection. Her smile was plastered on, but her eyes were darting around the room, checking for cracks in the facade. "You came," she whispered, leaning in to kiss my cheek. "I am so proud of you for being brave." "I am not brave, Mom," I said, pulling back slightly so I could look at her face. "I am just punctual." "Listen to me," she hissed, her smile never wavering. "Tonight is critical. We are closing the charter circle. We need absolute harmony. If you behave, if you just smile and nod, and let people see that you are stable, we can talk about a role for you later. We can put you back in, maybe a committee seat next year." She spoke as if I were a doll she had put on a shelf and could take down whenever it suited her decor. "We can put you back in." "I don't want a committee seat," I said. "Then what do you want?" she asked, her voice tightening. "Money, is that it? Because we can discuss an allowance. Just don't make a scene." "I want you to tell the truth," I said. Marlene laughed. It was a dry, brittle sound. "Oh, grow up, Claire. The truth is what we make it. Look at this room. Look at these people. They want to believe in us. Don't ruin their fairy tale." She squeezed my arm one last time, hard enough to leave a bruise. "Daniel is starting the speeches," she said. "Stand in the back and smile." She turned and glided away, clapping her hands gently to gather the room's attention. Everyone, if we could have a moment." The conversation died down. the hum of the party faded into an expectant silence. The guests turned toward the grand staircase, where my father was standing. Daniel looked the part of the patriarch perfectly. He stood on the second step, elevated just enough to command the room without looking arrogant. He held a glass of champagne in one hand and a microphone in the other. "Thank you," he said, his voice rich and warm. "Thank you all for coming into our home. Saturday night at the club was a spectacle, wasn't it?" A ripple of polite laughter and applause went through the room. "But tonight," Daniel continued, his face softening into practiced humility, "tonight is about family. It is about the quiet promises we make to those who came before us." He looked at Marlene, who was gazing up at him with adoration. "My mother, Eleanor Ward, was a woman of few words," Daniel said, "but she had a vision. She wanted to build a legacy that would outlast us all. And for a long time, Marlene and I struggled with how to best honor that vision. We waited, we prayed, and finally, we built the legacy circle." I stood near the back. By a large potted fern, I watched him rewrite history in real time. "We waited. No. You waited until she died so you could ignore her wishes." "There have been challenges," Daniel said, his eyes scanning the room and landing, briefly, on me. "Family is complex. We have had our stumbling blocks, but we believe that unity is the only way forward." He reached into the inside pocket of his tuxedo jacket. He pulled out an envelope. It wasn't the cream-colored envelope from the photo. This one was blue. It was sealed with a wax stamp. "Before she passed," Daniel said, his voice dropping to a reverent whisper, "Eleanor left us a final blessing, a letter expressing her hope that her assets would be used to elevate this family's standing in the service of others. We haven't shared this before. It felt too personal. But tonight, as we ask you to join us as charter members, we wanted you to know that this mission has her seal of approval." He held the blue envelope up. "This is her mandate," he said, "her blessing for the Ward Legacy Circle." The room was silent. People were leaning in, captivated by the theater of it. It was a masterstroke, using the dead woman to vouch for the fraud. My pulse remained steady. I looked at the blue envelope. It was a prop. It was a piece of stationery my mother had bought at the boutique downtown. I stepped away from the fern. I walked into the center of the room. I didn't rush. I moved with the deliberate, heavy gravity of a planet entering orbit. "Claire," someone whispered. Daniel saw me coming. His smile faltered for a microsecond, then froze into a rictus of warning. "Claire," he said into the microphone, his tone jovial but edged with steel. "So glad you could join us." I stopped 10 feet from the stairs. I didn't have a microphone, but the acoustics of the house were on my side. I projected my voice, clear and cold. "Is that the original addendum, Dad?" I asked. "Or is it a copy?" The question hung in the air. The silence that followed was different from the reverent silence of the speech. This was the sharp, dangerous silence of a pin being pulled from a grenade. Daniel laughed lightly. "Claire, honey, this isn't a legal document. It is a personal letter. We can talk about family mementos later. I am asking," I continued, not raising my voice, "because I have evidence that you have a habit of forging documents to suit your narrative." A gasp rippled through the room. Mrs. Gable put a hand to her throat. Marlene stepped forward from the side, her face pale beneath the makeup. She moved quickly, placing herself between me and the guests. "Claire," she said, her voice trembling with staged concern. "Honey, please, this is not the place. You are not well. We talked about this. You are having an episode." She looked at the guests, her eyes pleading for sympathy. "I am so sorry. Everyone," she said. "Our daughter has been struggling with some mental health challenges. She gets confused about reality. We are handling it. It was the kill shot. She was publicly diagnosing me to invalidate my voice. I didn't flinch. I didn't look at her. I looked at Tessa Klein, who was standing near the front, holding her champagne glass like a weapon. Tessa, I said, you have known me for 5 years. You know I don't make scenes. And you know I don't lie. Tessa looked at me. She looked at Marlene. She didn't move. I reached into my clutch. I pulled out the folder Daniel had given me at brunch. I took out the declined involvement letter. This is a letter my parents claim I signed 3 days ago, I said, holding it up. It resigns my position in the foundation and claims I am stepping back for health reasons. It is the document they are using to explain why I am not on the board. I walked over to Tessa. I held the paper out to her. Tessa, you have seen my signature on contracts, I said. Look at this. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my driver's license. I placed it on top of the letter. And look at this. Tessa hesitated for a heartbeat. Then she set her glass down on a side table. She took the letter. She took the license. The room watched, breathless. Tessa adjusted her glasses. She studied the letter. She studied the ID. She looked closely at the ink. The pressure is wrong, Tessa said. Her voice was loud in the quiet room. The signature on the letter, it is too heavy. It looks drawn. It doesn't match the fluidity of the license. She looked up at Daniel. Daniel, Tessa said, where did this letter come from? Tessa, please, Daniel said, his voice losing its warmth. Don't indulge her. She is sick. She forged it herself to frame us. It is part of the pathology. I didn't forge it, I said. And I didn't burn the real addendum, either. I turned back to the crowd. The blue envelope is a prop, I said. The real document, the one Eleanor Ward actually wrote, was in a cream-colored envelope marked EWW Addendum. My mother was holding it at the gala on Saturday night. I pulled out the photo of Marlene holding the envelope. I held it up. And in that addendum, I said, Eleanor Ward didn't give them her blessing. She gave them a condition. She said that if this foundation became a vehicle for social climbing, control of the assets would bypass them. I looked directly at my father. She named a steward, I said. She named me. Daniel's face went gray. The microphone dipped in his hand. That is a lie, Marlene screamed. The mask finally slipped. The sweet concern vanished, replaced by a raw, ugly panic. She is lying. She wants the money for herself. She is a greedy, ungrateful child. Why would you hide your own daughter? The voice came from the back of the room. It was the venture capitalist partner. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Daniel. If she is the steward, the man said, and you erased her, that is fraud. Daniel, that is theft. We need to pause the pledges, another voice said. It was Mrs. Gable. If there is a question about the legal structure, we can't commit funds, not until this is cleared up. The social logic of the room shifted instantly. 5 minutes ago, secrecy was power. Now, secrecy was embarrassment. Secrecy was risk. These people didn't mind cruelty, but they hated liability. They hated being part of a scam. This is ridiculous, Daniel shouted. He stepped down from the stairs. Security, get her out of here. But there was no security. There were only caterers, and they were watching wide-eyed from the kitchen doorway. Show us the blue envelope, Evan Rourke called out. He stepped forward. Open it. Mr. Ward, read us the blessing. Daniel looked at the blue envelope in his hand. He looked at the room full of suspicious faces. He looked at me. If he opened it, everyone would see it was blank, or a grocery list, or a fake. He couldn't open it. This is a private family matter, Daniel snarled. He shoved the blue envelope into his pocket. The event is over. Everyone leave, now. The envelope, Daniel, Evan pressed. If it is real, show us. Marlene lunged. She moved with a speed I didn't know she possessed. She grabbed Daniel's arm, her fingers digging into the fabric of his jacket. Give it to me, she hissed. She snatched the envelope from his pocket. She turned her back to the room, her hands moving frantically. It is gone, she shrieked, turning back around, her hands empty. She looked wild, her eyes manic. Someone took it, Claire took it. She is a thief. But I hadn't moved. I was 10 feet away. It didn't disappear, Mom, I said quietly. You just hid it in your dress, just like you hid the truth. The room was dissolving into chaos. Guests were retrieving their coats. Phones were out. People were whispering, pointing, leaving. The legacy circle was collapsing in real time. Maya stepped up to me. She handed me a file. You should serve him now, she whispered. I took the file. I walked up to Daniel. He looked old. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. The benevolent patriarch was gone, replaced by a frightened man caught in a lie. Daniel Ward, I said. This is a formal notice of a petition to freeze the assets of the Ward Family Trust pending a forensic audit. I pressed the file against his chest. He didn't take it, so I let it drop to the floor at his feet. I am the steward, I said, and I am taking over. I turned around. I didn't look at Marlene, who was sobbing real tears this time, tears of rage into her hands. I didn't look at the guests who were scrambling to distance themselves from the blast radius. I walked out the front door. I walked down the stone steps, past the valet stand, past the signs that said continuity. I got into my car. My hands were steady. I put the key in the ignition. I didn't feel happy. Revenge doesn't feel like happiness. It feels like relief. It feels like finally putting down a heavy weight you were never supposed to carry. I drove out of the gate and onto the coastal highway. The ocean was dark and vast to my left. I was alone. My parents would never speak to me again. The society of Harbor Glen would treat me like a pariah for exposing their fragility. But as I drove, I reached into my purse and touched the flash drive Evan had returned to me. I thought about Eleanor. I thought about the library roof she fixed. I thought about the community garden. I wasn't the daughter who didn't fit the room anymore. I was the one who built a new room. And this time, the door was open. Thank you so much for listening to My Parents Texted Me, Don't Come Only Elites Are Invited. Their guests started asking where I was. I hope you enjoyed this story of betrayal, family secrets, and reclaiming the truth. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below with your country or city. It's always amazing to see how far these stories travel. And if you enjoyed Claire's journey, please make sure to hit that subscribe button to Revenge Stories and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. What would you have done if you were in Claire's shoes? Would you have confronted them earlier? Or did she make the right choice by waiting for the perfect moment? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.